this discussion is about how to approach making a living from the ocarina as a individual. We aren't talking about like large business issues here. And as the slide says, this is an open discussion, so feel free to contribute if you wish. And to start with, like, why does it matter if people can make a living from working on the ocarina or not? Like, be able to commit their full effort to any of their work relating to the ocarina. But my feelings relating to this is that when you're working on any kind of project, time is usually the biggest limiting factor, like constraining what you're able to do, and a lack of commitment limits the size of available achievable projects. So to give an example, my book, Serious Ocarina Player, ended up being slightly less than 300 A4 pages. And completing this project took approximately 2 years. And during the majority of that time, I was working about like 12 a.m. to midnight almost every day. I dropped basically all of my social interactions and like things that I was doing for my own enjoyment. And I also had to have my ocarina sales closed quite a lot of the time because I just couldn't deal with that in addition to writing, because my work on writing was taking so long. And a project like of that nature is inherently going to take longer than expected, because as you're working through the project, you over time discover new and better ways of explaining things, which ends up like, it just means that the project kind of expands in scope as you work on it. So it ends up just taking longer than you expected. And my feeling is that projects that take too long could become irrelevant on completion due to market changes over time. And I think basically my feeling is that for the ocarina to be able to grow, we need people to be able to make more large-scale projects of this nature, experimenting with, like, particularly I feel at the moment we need a lot more resources on how to teach the ocarina and how to learn how to teach the ocarina. And I feel that to be able to make that happen, particularly in a reasonable amount of time, I believe that people need to be able to work on this full time so that they can, like, in addition to writing, be able to spend time teaching people so that they can test their ideas with relation to teaching in practice, and therefore generate better better guidance on how to approach teaching. And my feelings on why doing other work to support one's work relating to the ocarina not being an option is like working on any project of notable size in addition to a full-time job would force you to choose between project work and friends, romantic partners, family, children, and even things like physical health and like exercise. And in my opinion, that's a toxic trade-off, because I feel that I don't want, personally, I don't want to have to give up my social life just because I want to work on some other project. Like, even as I said earlier with my own book, getting that thing finished, I still had to drop everything else that I was doing in addition to working on it basically all the time that I was awake. And finding part-time or freelance work is an option potentially, but it's not perfect at all, because finding that kind of work ends up taking some amount of time in itself, so that ends up being an additional overhead. And like, you have to research things to keep skills up to date, and like, just it generally ends up taking more time than you might think. I have a story relating to this. I was, like, some people might know that my background is in computer programming before I started making ocarinas, and like, while writing my book, I worked on a website for a friend, but my time and energy was basically already completely saturated with my work on the book. And because of that, I ended up having to drop out of that project, and it ended up being a really bad experience for both of us. And that relates to the next point, whereby splitting focus in that way means a lower commitment to everything, which negatively affects everything that you're going to be doing, including your like proper, in quotes, job. And like, other work would end up consuming energy, leaving you working on your Ocarina projects in the evening when you're presumably tired, which will be less productive. And finally, specifically relating to ocarina making, making ocarinas in addition to doing other work is a logistical nightmare, because orders can come in at absolutely any time. And even selling from stock is still a significant problem, because packing and shipping orders in itself takes a significant amount of time. And post office opening hours might conflict with the time that you're required to be at your job, which could make like shipping completely infeasible, potentially.
Tina agrees with you. She says it like it's absolutely 100% true. It's always feast of famine.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Does anyone else have any comments so far?
I agree that the main thing is you need to focus on your time. I mean, time is money. It's like every amount of time you spend doing something is time you don't spend doing another thing. So if it takes you too much time to do something and it's not making you profitable, you may need to start thinking about maybe I don't know if decreasing quality is the thing, but being more like, I don't know, they're more like
about what?
realistic in some things. So yeah, it's something that you effectively you need to study, and you need to keep record on all of that stuff. If something takes you more time that what you thought, you need to write that down, and then you say, okay, for the next time, this is going to take me this amount of hours. So I know that my prices should go up by this percentage of money. So it's something that, yeah, it's really complex, and it's a lot of trial and error. But yeah, I mean, time is money. So it's something really important to take in account.
I agree with you. But like I mentioned these two slides specifically because I keep, like, every time I mention that I have like problems making a living doing this, I always get someone suggesting doing other work. And like I could just spend, like I could literally talk for hours about why it's not feasible for me to do that. But like I agree with you about needing to pay more attention to, like, needing to make, like, pay more attention to like how much time things are taking and what I'm making on that time, so that
Exactly,
I can
because maybe
optimize
you
better.
can. Exactly. Maybe you can, after researching and knowing how much time it makes you to do something, maybe it can be, you can cut the time by doing certain things. I'm seeing in the chat, for example, people are delegating things, but delegating, of course, means paying for employees. So, I mean, yeah, it's hard. It's really hard to find that balance, but I think it can be done. I mean,
I
maybe with
agree.
part-time jobs, and you say, like, I'm not going to dedicate, I don't know, instead of 10 hours that I'm doing daily, I'm going to do, I don't know, 6 hours, and see what can I do with this. I mean, I'm really selling a lot less because I cut down 2 hours. So maybe I think it's possible. I mean, it's really hard to have two jobs and everything, but maybe it's possible, starting low, and see what impact it has really on your operation.
Well, I already do have some other work. I make, I manage some software for a friend, but like it's, that work is basically dried up right now due to the pandemic, and I was finding it very difficult to deal with in my time commitments. So I was pretty much looking to offload that onto someone else anyway, but like I want to continue with my slides now, and we can talk at, like, talk about different things at the end or later. Like, I want to now go over a little bit what making a living from the ocarina will mean legally with regards to taxes specifically. And like in practice, what we're doing means that we're going to be working, like you're going to be working for yourself and taking your own payments. And because of that, it means you have to make yourself known to your country's tax authority, and how you do so depends on the country you live in. For the UK, we have to fill in a tax return annually declaring like what I've made. And I suspect that other countries will have a similar arrangement, but like I don't know how this works around the world, so you'll have to do your own research for your own country.
And there's also sales tax. Do you collect sales tax, Robert? And
We don't have that in the UK if you're making less than about £80,000 in turnover. you
Man.
have something called VAT here, like value added tax, which is basically a sales tax. However, you don't have to charge it if you're making less than, I think it's like £78,000 a year in profit, and I'm nowhere close to that. So, like, you can charge VAT and then claim it back, but that's just like additional complexity that I don't want to deal with right now because I don't have to.
Yeah, I've been trying to navigate that. In the States, it basically varies by state what you're required to do. Some of them have minimum thresholds where if you don't exceed that, you don't need to collect it. In my state, they're basically like, you sell something, you got to pay Uncle Sam. I'm just like,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, I've done some sales without collecting it, but for me, I think if I want to start selling more, that's something I have to do in addition to declaring income, as you're saying.
Does anyone else have anything to add to this?
And like I wanted to add like why legality is important. Like yes, you can like sell something like illegal like without asking government or so, but like it will be hard to prove like the services like where did you take this money to travel or to do other stuff involving money.
That's another good point to make is if you're working for yourself, traveling and particularly getting visas can become more difficult. It's not so much of a problem for me here. And the next section talks about like within the Ocarina community, I think that there's like about 3 vague categories of people who will need to be able to make money from the Ocarina. And these are like influencers, makers, and educators. So influencers are people who work to promote the Ocarina. Influencers are people who work to promote the Ocarina. Makers obviously make instruments, and the educators are people who teach teach people or how to play the ocarina, potentially make teaching materials to like allow people to learn to play better. But like, and the next slides that we have are going to talk about different like potential revenue streams for each of these categories. And making money as an influencer or player is the category that I have the least personal experience with, and I'm not so, I can't offer that much practical advice with, but from what I've seen other people doing and also some advice that I had from Jordan Moore, as I've been talking to. I think the main thing about making money as an influencer player is to build an audience and try to get them to donate to you through services like Patreon. But in addition to that, you can make money through advertising revenue on videos or through a website. You can You can sell merchandise through various services. You can potentially make money busking. You can like sell albums, perform live, and like have gigs and like get paid for gigs. License music to services including Spotify and Apple Music. And on like less, like more remote possibilities include things like branching into writing books or teaching and mentoring. And within this category, each of these things, we need to consider how people can approach doing those effectively and create or link to guidance for people to be able to start doing them. For example, with performing, how should one approach venues to find gigs? Like, how should one approach talking to venues in a way that's likely to like increases the likelihood of getting a gig? Uh, how can people license copyrighted music to legally sell covers? Personally, I have no idea. And like how to grow an audience effectively. And like I have some slides later from like Jordan Moore about this last topic, and he was going to come to this event to speak about it himself, but he may not be able to because he's moving house today. But does anyone have anything to add about this slide?
Yeah, no, I think it's really important that exactly making money as an influencer, you need to not focus on just one of those things. You probably need, I mean, not probably, I'm sure from all the experience and the musicians I know that you need to you need to do a lot of that stuff. I mean, you can go basking, you need to be performing different things, probably getting different bands from different styles to have more gigs. You could do a Patreon, for example, to have a more steady income monthly. You could do, you must know, and the most important thing from what you said at the beginning, that for me, time is money, is that you need to find the balance that which thing is going to make me more money in my context, for because this is really different in every country. I mean, the basking laws, how many gigs you can perform in the city you live. There are many weddings or pubs that allow musicians. You need to take any of those things into account and find locally what is the combination that works best for you. You need to do like, I don't know, like a schedule that I'm going to invest, I don't know, 30% of my time promoting myself, doing the branding, talking to revenues and finding gigs. Another, I don't know, from on this schedule from Monday to Friday, I'm going to go basking. Then, I don't know, normally the gigs and events and weddings and everything happens on Saturdays and Sundays. So it's like a full day's job if you want to do it. So it takes a lot of time, but you need to study and research a lot in locally what works best for you and how can you maximize your profit, because each of the things requires a lot of time. For example, I don't know, if you want to be a YouTuber, you are going to invest a lot of time, but it's really complicated to make steady money from that. I mean, probably, I don't know, David Ramos is like the only one that makes like really good money from that and has all the market like already covered. But I don't know, you have to study and research a lot what works and what is the combination of activities that will make you that will maximize your profit.
I agree with you. And I imagine that as like if someone was to try all of these different things, then like some like some of the options will start to appear as being more effective, so then they can start to focus and drop things which, like if something's notably less effective or significantly underperforming, then they can just drop that
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
refocus. But
And
like out of the three categories, I think that influencers and players have the most difficult task with being able to make money from their playing in today's market, because like people just stream music on the internet basically for free, and there's kind of an expectation that you can do that now.
And what I wanted to say that for influencers, like
Mm-hmm.
it's not only important to count things in money, like not like exactly like I'll go basking and like I'll bring approximately this amount of money back, but also for those who makes their living through YouTube, it's important to uh, grow their fan base. So probably like visit some Comic Con or like things like that, and like knowing that like this exact visit like to Comic Con won't bring money immediately, but it can increase your fan base that will lead to increasing of your patrons and like things like that.
So that you get better
Ex-
returns in the future.
Exactly. I mean, I made a little presentation that I want to show after this. Yeah, it talks about the
Yes.
same, but it shows that I mean the main thing is exactly as Christina says, that it's not just about playing a gig or doing or going basking or anything. I mean, you have as a performer, you have to have your branding, have your marketing to promote yourself. You have to grow a fan base. I don't know if I mean followers that will go to concerts, but at least have your name put where you're living, so that people can hire you more easily. I mean, they say, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
you are that guy. I know you can present your material, your videos, your anything," and they,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, of course, I want to hire you." And then, of course, I think that branding and marketing is really important, and you have to invest time in that. But of course, then it goes like your art speaks for yourself. I mean, if you go to a gig and you make a really nice performance, all the people there will talk about it. And I don't know, probably the same if it's a pub or a restaurant, you can be a frequent player there, which I have seen that works a lot of for people. I have seen that performers that go like, I don't know, twice per week to the same restaurant because they have an agreement, and they are known for their quality. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Uh, like Tina in the comments just says the UK has a thing where you have to actually apply to BUSC, doesn't it? Or is that something else I'm thinking of? People I know who make money from this kind of thing have branched out into many other instruments and happen to play Ocarina as well, like Nancy Rumble, for example. With regards to the UK having to apply for a license to busk, personally, I don't actually know because I've never looked into it myself, but I believe that it depends on what city you're in. And I completely agree with uh, like possibly branching out into other instruments so that one can create a more diverse performance. However, my own experience is I used to do a lot of playing at open mics, and uh, from that, like I would like you'd have an event where there was like multiple people playing, and then like throughout most of the performances, like the audience would keep talking over them. And then when I started playing, within a couple of seconds, the whole room just went completely silent immediately. because the ocarina as an instrument has a very distinctive tone, which isn't widely known. People don't often hear it. So I believe that potentially adding an ocarina player to an existing band could potentially be a way of attracting a great deal of attention to said band, but I don't have the practical experience to know if that's actually true.
Yeah, want to share my experience. Last year, I went basking alone a lot. Yeah, so I know how that works, and of course, it's really important that you know the laws because it's really different in every city. I mean, in every country in the world, it's really different. So you need to pay attention to that. And the reactions to the ocarina alone were like fantastic. I mean, people coming from another blog could listen and they were already paying attention to, oh, what's this this different thing. So I think that the ocarina being so special and so unknown has its advantage and disadvantage. The huge advantage as a player, as a musician, I think that it's unique and it gets the people's attention. Then I started playing with a band and it works great. I mean, I went basking also with a band with, I don't know, 4 more players, like guitar, charango, I don't know, some cajon, drums, etc. And the reactions are great. I mean, it really attracts people. So I
Cool.
encourage everyone to yeah, you can play and go basking alone and then you can do your stuff alone, being a solo performer. But I encourage everyone, and it's really profitable, I think, finding a lot of players to play with. I mean, you can make a duet with one guitar player. You can be a part of not the main player, but part of a big band, and everything works great. I mean, the ocarina has a place in a lot of different music, and I think that yeah, it works great. So yeah, I encourage everyone to finding another musicians because the ocarina works. It's a melody instrument. I mean, it's difficult, for example, to find anyone like singing alone without accompaniment. So it's the same. You need to find more musicians, and it works great. It works great.
I agree with you. Personally, I think the ocarina works very well with other instruments, but like I've hardly ever, like from like serious players, a lot of the focus seems to be on like ocarina ensemble playing, and I think that the ocarina also can work very effectively with other instruments. So I'd like to see more people putting attention into like playing ocarina with other instruments, but also playing other genres of music and experimenting with it in contexts that people might not like intuitively think to use it in.
Exactly. That is a huge point because especially for basking, which is my main experience, you have to, I mean, with everything of this, you have to study, you have to research, and you have to be smart. I mean, I played, of course, I chose songs that were popular. I was in Prague, and so my main target were tourists from all over the world. So I had to play songs that were like internationally known. So I was playing, I don't know, Elton John, Led Zeppelin, Kansas, I don't know, pop and rock and mainstream music. And when they heard those songs, I mean, I did of course, mainly the vocals, but I also played the guitar solo parts from Stairway to Heaven, for example, and people were like crazy about it. So yeah, you have to try out what works best for this, because even if one, I mean, I'm not saying that you have to sell out or everything, but if you know, for example, that the anime conventions works great, that you're going to play Zelda songs or anime songs, and maybe you don't like them, but money-wise, it works. So you have to make the research and investigations.
Of course, but I also think that people need to be paying attention and trying to get the ocarina known in environments besides the anime background, because like I've never done any kind of performance in that kind of environment. I've always been playing, like personally, I play primarily Irish and Scottish folk music. So I've been playing like primarily in folk music groups, and I've sold ocarinas at an event that was about English and Scottish, like small pipes, bagpipes, and that like I got a lot of attention in that kind of setting as well. So like I think that limiting like the very narrow-minded point of view towards like only seeing the ocarina within anime music is extremely short-sighted, and I think that there's a significant potential like just hanging market for the instrument outside of that setting. It's just people just don't know that it exists.
Yeah, I think there's still potential there, though. I mean, I think it's kind of the way at these conventions that it's sold. I mean, near me, there's a convention called MagFest, and it's specifically focused on video game music. But you know, the Akabanda group, I mean, I think they performed there a couple of years ago, and I think that's a good thing because it's actually showing people still like, you know, even though they're playing video game music, they're showing them like what the instrument is capable of, in a way that they wouldn't see when they're just walking up to the vendor selling them on the floor. So, I mean, I think kind of like with Stefan's is it is part of it is like, you know, you play the music that people I think kind of want to hear depending on what your audience is. So, but yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, you know, kind of what people were saying previously, it does go well with lots of other instruments, and we see like, you know, YouTubers like David and Sam and people who they'll incorporate, you know, ukulele or guitar and other. I mean, it definitely works. I think I agree. I'd like to see more of that.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, and especially, I mean, what you said, Robert, is right, because you don't have to limit yourself to some genre in specific, because, for example, you can find events on, I mean, for example, anime events. Okay, you know these songs, you can play it. I don't know, an Irish festival because of St. Patrick. Oh, you can go with your guitarist and everything, and then you can go and play that. Classical music, you can go and play that. So exactly, you don't have to limit yourself, even if some of the songs, I mean, aren't so appealing to you, or you may think that it will diminish the value of the ocarina. I agree that we shouldn't focus on, oh, the ocarina, we should brand it as a toy instrument or just for this kind of music. And I agree, it's exactly the opposite. We should play as much genres as possible. I mean, to show, because we have seen, I'm reading the comments, for example, Tina says, Milt, how he plays like this jazzy music. I mean, it's great. I'm sure that in any concert, people that doesn't know the ocarina would be like jaw drop. It would be like amazed. So yeah, I think that we shouldn't limit the potential of the ocarina, because it works for every environment. So, and marketing wise, we should be able to say, even if I don't like so much this style, you know what, I'm going to learn it because this festival is going to pay me this much money. So,
so I think we actually, so Ella just said, I guess she
comments. Go on.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna note Ella's point because I get she's a member of that group. You know, and specifically she says, so a lot of our Ocarina fans that felt encouraged to pick up Ocarina do end up branching into classical music because they're inspired to push their skills beyond what they initially enjoy, anime, video games, etc. Introductions through what's popular isn't limiting if nothing spoke to a potential new ocarinist in the first place. And I agree with that last point there. That
I agree as well.
Like, you know, a lot of people who are going to this convention, they're there because they like video game music, and you know, I don't know, like if they see it, being treated like a real instrument, then maybe they'll be more likely to pick it up. So even if it is game music.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and there's no problem if people just like it to as a hobby and to have something like fun and a little toy. But if you find a musician or something that is interested, he'll naturally grow into experimenting, finding music that he likes, classical or anything. So I think that anything helps. I mean, if you play at a convention with only anime fans, and yeah, it can be a great starting point from a future potential musician. It can
Basically, you
grow
can
even if
lure them.
yeah, exactly.
I agree with like basically everything that's been said, and like from from what I've talked about on TON, it might come up like I might come across as saying that like specifically I don't like Zelda music or something, but that's not actually like I don't feel like that. My opinion towards that is that I think that Zelda music is fine as an aspect of like what the ocarina is used for. It's just personally, I think that the instrument can do like it can be used in so many different contexts, and just pushing specifically that one very limited aspect is like I believe that the instrument can do a great like can be used to do a great deal more, and like I think that people should be aware of that. Uh, we can move on to the next slide now, I think. I believe that making money as a maker is probably the most obvious way of making money through the ocarina, because like, obviously you can sell ocarinas that you make yourself or resell ocarinas made by other people. There's also opportunities in selling teaching materials through like selling through distributors such as physical music shops, and I think like people need to be paying more attention to that, because like a lot of the ocarinas that are available in shops, at least here, are absolutely terrible, and like that's I believe it's giving like anyone that gets exposed to it through that is probably just like going to bounce and not want to continue, because like what they have isn't actually a playable instrument, it's more of a novelty item. There's also opportunities, of course, of selling teaching materials about how to make ocarinas itself, or like to like directly teach people how to make them as students. And there's also a potential to make like donations or Patreon type thing if someone was like to share details about how they like their own processes or something like that could potentially be restricted to like paying um, like as a paid thing through Patreon or something similar. However, in my experience relating to this last point on this slide, the market for ocarinas as serious instruments within the English-speaking community is currently extremely small and only viable with regards to like me making them myself within the UK economy. If I can target a high-end audience with high prices, and because of the time that it takes to make them in comparison to what I can sell them for. Like, the UK is a considerably more expensive country to live in than somewhere like China, for example, where a lot of things, like, I think there's a significant of course, there's a significant manufacturing industry in China, and a lot of that is simply because like labor is just way cheaper there. So I think that there might, as making money as a maker, it might actually be more effective to not make them yourself, but resell instruments made in Asia. But like, I don't do that myself because I want to make something, like, I have a very specific goal with my own instruments, and absolutely nothing that the Asian market produces is close to the playing characteristics that I aim to achieve with my own instruments. But does anyone else have anything to add on this topic?
Yeah, I think that as a maker, I mean, of course, you are the first one to know what goes around, and it's really difficult from what I have seen because the market is mainly online. I mean, I don't know if you can tell me how many ocarinas you're selling in UK versus how many ocarinas are selling to other countries, because fixing a price, yeah, of course, your cost of living is really high. It's higher than other countries. So other makers from other countries will sell probably with same quality, but will sell them lower. So people will tend to buy another thing. So setting the price is really complicated if you are selling mostly online to other countries. I don't know if you can tell me your experience according to that, to how many ocarinas you sold in the UK versus the rest of the world.
Well, the British market for transverse ocarinas is basically completely non-existent because of there's a significant effort here to promote like the significant use of the four-hole pendant ocarina for teaching music to children in schools, and because of that, people tend to associate the term ocarina with the four-hole system, and it's virtually impossible to get like any search ranking here because of the significant amount of promotion of that side of things. So like basically I can count the number of ocarinas that I sell to the UK, if not on one hand, on two hands in a year. So like less than 10.
Okay, so yeah, so that makes it really difficult then. I mean, making ocarinas is really a business. I mean, you have define your cost, your time, you have to set the price, make spend money on the marketing, and do everything. It's really, I mean, winnings and losses, and you have to do that. And it's really, yeah, it's a complicated thing. I mean, if you are selling mostly online,
my
yeah,
market is
your prices
primarily
are going to
America.
compete. Yeah, your prices are going to compete with all the other prices. So it's complicated. I mean, yeah, it's definitely a hard thing to achieve.
Something like 70 or 80% of my sales go to the USA. And that was a significant problem for several months with this pandemic because shipping became unreliable and extremely slow for a while. So like for several months, I had almost no orders at all, but
Yeah,
it's
so
like
so
it's
maybe
recovered mostly now.
Exactly. So I am seeing the comments from Ella. It's definitely one thing that could make more profitable to be a maker is effectively to start getting more players and promoting it locally.
I
Because of
agree.
course, if you have more players, you will have more customers. So that
Mm-hmm.
could be like an indirect action to make to start growing your sales, like promoting the Ocarina in local events.
Mm-hmm.
So I was saying, like Tina was asking if there are like weekend markets, for example, like small street weekend markets where you could have your stand and selling ocarinas and playing it and also selling them at the same time, because of course then you can manage better the prices according to the cost of living that you
Mm-hmm.
have there locally.
I've tried to sell at general street markets or craft markets before, and I found that it's a complete waste of time because it's the wrong audience. What I have had success with here is selling at specialized, like events specializing in folk music and folk instruments. And I also pre-lockdown had interest from like local chain music store that sells folk music. Like it's this folk music specialist selling um, like all different kinds of folk instruments, and I had interest from them in selling my ocarinas. But then, like immediately after that, we had a like complete lockdown here, and all of the shops closed, and they've only just started opening again very recently. So I've
Yeah,
I haven't.
I'm watching. Yeah, I'm watching Ella's comment, and she said one thing that I completely agree, that she with a team of ocarinists and friends started spreading the word about it, and locally the instrument was well received by over 300 people. So
Mm-hmm,
maybe one thing as a maker to grow locally would be to make some kind of partnership, yeah, with
mm-hmm,
some people that you may think that could be good influencers. I mean that
mm-hmm.
people that will go to gigs, that will locally will start going to pubs, go basking, making a lot of events. So
Yes,
if he makes money
like
by doing that
bands
and he
basically.
promotes your ocarinas and the ocarina awareness in general, then
Mm-hmm.
as Ella says, the word spreads like really quickly, and you can start like growing more potential customers. That's
Of
the problem
course,
that is generally in the world of the ocarina, like having how can we have more potential customers.
of course. My problem right now is actually primarily sales, like the price that I'm selling for, rather than sales volume, because like selling more ocarinas wouldn't help anything, and it would make my situation, it would cause me a huge amount of problems because I'm, as it is, already hitting my production limit as a single person. So I can't physically make any more than I'm already making without, like, say, dropping social activities and things. And I don't want to do that. Like, I've lived like that before while I was writing my book, and it almost drove me insane. So I'm not doing that again.
I mean, I do think, Robert, though, if people are promoting it as, like Stefan is saying, and people see, any maker's instrument as like valuable, right, then
Mm-hmm.
it stands to reason that you can just increase your prices, right?
Of
Because people are
course.
going to want to have honestly, I think that's a big thing that you know, like I don't know what your demand currently is, right? If you're not, it sounds like in some way at times you're not able to keep up. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think that like asking for more money is not unreasonable given the time that it takes to make them, and all the time you've invested in building that craft.
Like Tina says, like, what is your prediction speed? Basically, like, it takes approximately 4 hours to make a single chamber and about 5 or 6 to make a double. And like, a lot of my time also goes into organizing things like this event, as well as writing articles and doing general, I guess, I somewhat overlap being a maker and a advocate at the same time. So quite a lot of my time is doing advocacy type things, and like that work is basically completely unpaid right now, and that's somewhat of a problem. But, like, I agree that with Austin, that trying to make, like, increasing local awareness would help with increasing people's perceived value of the ocarina and allow higher prices.
And one thing I'd add to that, Robert, is, you know, a lot of potters really struggle with this as well. So, like, I mean, I don't know if you consider yourself a potter, but I think a lot of times when it comes to handmade things, people don't understand how it's made and sort of the difficulty of it. And so I think when you can also educate them, I mean, maybe that's something you do, um, as well as, like, you know, showing. I mean, personally, the reason why I started making is because I was just interested in the process, and I think a lot of people, even if they don't necessarily want to make, they would be interested in seeing that. But then at least you're educating them. Like when you say, "Oh, it takes me, you know, 4 hours over a couple period of day," it's like, well, hey, that's like 1/10 of your week, like per occur. Like that's like a significant amount of time. Um,
At maximum, I can, like maximum production, I can make about 10 in a week, but like that's literally doing nothing else, and it's not much fun working at that level. So like at the moment, I'm making about 20 or 30 a month, and that's about the maximum that I can reasonably handle, like, and reasonably deal with without significantly changing my production methods. And then that would involve, like, any change to production method would involve a ton of research, which would take itself a huge amount of time. And then that's time that I'm losing that I can't make anything. So I would end up, like, while it might improve things in the future, it would create, it might end up making it impossible or very difficult to sell anything at all for about like 3 to 6 months, which would be a significant problem. And also I have this problem because I'm in a long distance relationship and I don't know exactly where I'm going to be living in the future. So because of that issue, I don't want to be putting a huge amount of like commitment into anything that I can't move right now. I guess.
I'd want to add about like makers, like how to make money and so on. Like for makers, it can be like profitable to popularize the idea of like that there is no one particular like ideal ocarina for everything, because like they have different range, different pitch, different texture of sound. So basically, like the like one ocarina isn't enough. Just buy more.
I think that, like, particularly beginner players aren't aware of how different ocarinas can serve like different ocarinas in the same key can serve uh, like different functions in music, so that like a player can have different, like, might need to have different ocarinas in the same key for playing different kinds of music. but I the ocarina as an instrument is a lot less flexible than many other classical instruments because basically the entire playing characteristics of the instrument are like timbre as well set by the maker and cannot be changed, and that's pretty much why what Christina just said is true. Any final comments on this slide before I move on?
No, for my part, no.
And making money as an educator teaching the ocarina, like I think that's also has very obvious ways, like options of moving forward, because like you can teach or mentor students individually or in groups and charge for that. You can also write books or create other teaching materials, including video lessons, which can generate revenue either through selling them as a like preset course, just as a block, which like seems to have become more of a thing recently. What's it? I think Skillshare is the site, isn't it, that does things like offers people to be able to sell courses in that kind of way. And
Skillshare, Udemy, Coursera, lots of them.
yes. And there's also an option of making a video course on something like YouTube and then generating ad revenue from that, or using that audience exposure to feed people to a Patreon or similar campaign. So you can generate revenue from providing educational resources in that way. But I'd hoped we would have someone here today who had more practical experience with actually teaching the ocarina in a classroom, and like they would have been able to add more to it. But I think like in most places in the world, to be able to teach music in a classroom, you have to be qualified as a teacher, and to be able to get that qualification is like several, like 2 or 3 year university course, massive expense. So like, personally, I feel that to be able to develop good teaching materials, we need people to be able to teach like start teaching the ocarina, start mentoring the ocarina in a much smaller, like in a way that doesn't have that enormous overhead, because it's just going to completely like brick wall everything and stop any progress being made. So I think that people should try, like with adults, like my partner Christina did a mentoring session with someone, I think about a month ago now, and she said that just in like spending an hour with someone, they made like massive obvious progress. And I think that just from seeing myself the number of complete beginners on TON who are posting videos with like very easily fixable uh, errors in their technique, which like are very like hour mentoring session could massively improve their the standard of their playing. I think there's a great deal of opportunity for people to start doing things like that today.
Yeah, and what about mentoring? Like, if they post a video on tone, it's hard to comment on that. Like, you can't say like hold your elbow higher, like, or try to toot into it, because like they will feel like they're criticizing and criticized, and like they feel kind of offended and like discouraged to do things further. But like you, if you were talking about like let's have a mentoring session, like just like 1 hour of talking, like they will be open to have this knowledge. And like if you're saying like hold elbow higher, they won't think that you're trying to judge them or something. Like you're just making them advice, and like they're more open to this advice.
I agree.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that this is a really important thing because being a teacher, I mean, the impact it has on the Ocarina community is like the best one. I mean, you are creating good new players, but I think that there's like two different things. First, the teaching at school, for example. Of course, you need to have study being a professor. I mean, that's being a teacher. That's like out of question, and that's an easy way like to make money and to make and to spread the awareness to a new kind of, I mean, to a new generation of people. But on the other side, there's like one as like a decent player. I mean, you have to be a decent player, and I agree that you as a decent player can teach another people like private lessons. Yeah, but the problem there, like money-wise, is that there aren't so many students available. I mean, the market isn't so wide that you can teach them. But I agree that you can. I mean, you can guide people. You can make videos. You can teach lessons. Being a decent player, but it's also a job that it's important. So you have to have a method. I mean, you have to be really a teacher, not just like, oh, I know how to play this, like, go. You can make a video about it and teaching also, but for teaching someone and promoting yourself as a teacher, I think that you need to work on it. You don't have to necessarily study a whole career, but for private lessons, I think that you need to develop a method and being serious about it.
I completely
But
agree
the
with
problem,
you.
yeah, yeah. But the problem always will be, and it's like the three things like teachers, players, influencers, and makers. Everything impacts on everything. I mean, if we would have like a lot of players, of course, more makers could be living from it, so it would be more profitable. With more makers, more players will be made because it's easier to access to a new Ocarina. And and of course, with more players, with more makers, and everything, there is more chance for a teacher to be to earn money from that. So it's like everything is really connected.
I agree. But I think that at the current point in time, the main thing that's lacking in the community is access to live human tuition or teaching, like teaching slash mentoring, because um, there's basically, as of right now, no culture whereby players would want to be guided. I guess there's no culture where players would be guided towards looking for tuition, because the ocarina kind of has a reputation as an instrument that you can learn by yourself. And I think that's wrong personally, because there's a lot of things that can be learned quite easily if you have access to a teacher, but that could take potentially months or even years to notice if one was learning by oneself without any kind of feedback, just like, and without any prior experience. Like intonation is something as I often say, but also like playing music requires a sense, like it's not, playing an instrument well isn't just a matter of learning the fingerings or like playing the notes. You need a sense of musicality, and developing that is something that having access to a teacher could really help with.
Exactly. I think that I want to point out something that Ella says that I completely agree. That, as you said also, Robert, it takes like, it's a serious thing. I mean, teaching, yeah, you have to know your stuff. You have to know about music, about notations, about everything. Yeah. And it's something you have to study. You have to develop your method. You have to do something. So it's work at the end.
I
So
agree.
it should be compensated with money. I mean, I paid like 2 years ago, before I decided to go on this like sabbatical year and be basking like and making money from music and all this. I took lessons, ocarina lessons, and what was my my biggest problem was like, where do I find a teacher locally? It was like impossible for me. I mean, in Chile,
Yes.
I couldn't find any ocarina teacher, of course. So then it was like online. And then we have like a Latin American community that I found out that there was like a flute player, yeah, from conservatory, from music school. And he also knew about ocarina. So he was like, oh, I know about this, and he could play. So I took him as a teacher. And of course, I paid him and everything, because it's like really valuable information. So but also we want to, as Ella said, there's a balance between what information can we give and make and spread this as a community and join together. Like, oh, I'm feeling that I'm not alone to learn this. People will be nice to me, will help me with this. So there's a balance between like uh, addressing people and teaching them like, oh, what you know, what's your experience, oh, you could do this, you could do that. But also you could say, but if you want lessons, like, do it with this guy because he knows his method, he has these things, and of course pay him. So there's a balance between all of this, because of course I mean, after all this, what we have been to the festival and everything, we in the Latin American community, we have stick like really together. And I was thinking about making some tutorials in Spanish to address the Spanish community. And of course, I'm not a teacher. I'm just I'm a player for hobby. But of course, I will. My disclaimer will be like, oh, this is something like for me, to the community, to yeah, to spread about it. But and to make them realize that this can be a serious instrument. And if you want to learn it like really well, you can access probably online, because there's not so many. You can access to like proper teachers.
I agree.
So yeah, so it's like finding that balance is like the main task for me, at least.
Yes. And also that's specifically why I feel that people have to be able to make a living from the ocarina and not do it on the side, because like bringing an instrument into a new market like that and creating those tutorials would be an absolutely enormous amount of work, and that's going to take like years probably, even if you were working on it full time. But like we've had several comments from Ella in the chat about things that I like completely agree with, but I'd really like if like she could come on the audio and actually like talk about her opinions directly. But like, are you not able to do that?
Oh,
Yes,
her audio is not working. So
that's fine. That's like, can someone read her previous two comments about so two thoughts I'd like to bring up, and the comment about community. Like, Christina, could you do that?
Sure, of course. So, two thoughts I'd like to bring up. Even though making lessons free or cheap will allow for people to have better access to the instrument, it takes a toll on the teacher, lesson creator. And second, earning well-deserved money from lessons does limit the access, but it creates many skilled players. However, there is no way of knowing whether they'll be cut out for further teaching. Bridging the gap here and finding the right balance is vital. We ought to reach out to members of the community and communicate what to do, but not merely focus on the skilled players and creating elitism.
Mm-hmm.
Second big one.
Yes.
Community should also be elevated as a focus. Not sure if everyone here can relate to this, but band, orchestra, symphony, choir members have a whole social culture that often improves their playing ability, passion from that very sense of belonging. I would have left the music world had it not been for the social aspect of music balancing the competitive atmosphere. It's heard among many of our community members that they feel alone in playing Ocarina and don't feel encouraged to continue when ostracized by their individual social circles. But when they're given encouragement and endorsed by us, they press forward. There is a very human aspect in ocarina playing, and humans are naturally social creatures.
Thank you. I completely agree with this, um, what she said, and I particularly agree with the point about feeling alone, because as I am here, I'm the only player that I know anywhere around where I live, and I'm one of like two makers in the country, the other one being Jade Everett in Kent. And um, like basically Budrio Ocarina Festival is the only opportunity that I, as a maker, ever get to interact with other makers or players in person, and I find that incredibly draining. So I do think that like, creating more opportunities for people to be able to meet up in person would be a significant improvement, because like Boudrio is great, but not everyone can practically, like, it's difficult for people to travel to an event like that because it's expensive. So I think that having more smaller scale local meetups um, would be a considerable advantage.
yeah, for me, for example, Budrio, I have gone the last two festivals there, and the feeling I had after the festival was like really amazing. I mean, it was a boost of energy about I want to do so much with the ocarina. I want to learn more. I want to start basking to go playing in front of everyone. It was like I want to know more people. It was like really amazing. And of course, it's really hard. I mean, I know here in Chile, I know only one ocarina player. I have met with him, but it's not like there aren't enough players to do this all of the time. So one of the things
Mm-hmm.
I encourage is to find music communities, local communities. For example, there in Prague, where I was last year, of course, I was like the only ocarina player, but I started searching for communities for, or where are all the open mics. I mean, you gather in the park to play music just for fun with everyone. And I started getting to know a lot of different musicians with different backgrounds from all the countries, and they all appreciated the ocarina and made me feel more comfortable with playing myself and being heard. So it's for the moment we know that the ocarina isn't so popular, so it's of course it's difficult to find like this kind of community in person locally, so we have only the festivals. But one of the things that I encourage people to do, ocarinas to do, is like go and meet other players, because I mean the ocarina works great with anything, with accordion, guitar, piano, with everything. So jamming with people, getting to know, presenting anyone the instrument, makes you like this feeling of community that works great, like for feeding your soul or anything like that, or for feeling like empowered.
I completely agree with you, and like I've done a significant amount of that myself. Like I said earlier, I used to play at like a lot of open mics and other things around where I live, and I've met a lot of local musicians because of that. But like I can play with other people for the experience of playing music, but as a maker, not having access to other ocarina players specifically is problematic, because I don't have, like, it's very difficult to judge the quality of your instruments or what other people are looking for if you can't get direct feedback from other players. Like, I've kind of figured that out over time, but it's mostly just been through making things, and now I've arrived at something that people generally seem to like, but it's not straightforward. And also I've learned a lot about the ocarina and the ergonomic design of the instrument from watching people playing at Boudreaux specifically, because everyone's hands are different and all players hold the instrument in different ways because there's no real standardized playing technique. Like, a lot of players just kind of work it out for themselves. So everyone plays slightly differently, and creating a physical design which supports like creating a design for an ocarina which supports different players is very difficult if I can't see how different people are holding my ocarinas. But
Exactly, and it's terrible also for the players. I mean, I can't, I can know. I mean, it would be awesome if I could go to a shop and try different ocarinas and talk directly to the maker and say, "Oh, I like this one. I think it's too soft. Maybe you can have another high pressure model." Or, "Oh, this fits very well." But no, I mean, I as a customer, I had to trust just like. On the sound samples, on the videos, on recommendations. And I mean, as you say, every people are different, have different taste on ergonomics, on sound and everything. So it's a problem that affects both makers and players. So yeah,
of course.
Yeah, basically festivals let you try all the instruments to find the right instrument for your hands and for your breath pressure.
exactly. Well, the first festival I went, I was really shy about it because I thought like, oh, so many professionals and everything. I was like, oh, I'm just starting. So I hate myself for not trying enough ocarinas. So now, yeah, but of course, it's like the only time where you can see, oh, all these makers from Asia, from Europe, from America, from all the world.
Mhm.
Yeah, so, and that's a problem because I mean, it happens twice a year, so, uh, every 2 years, and it's far away in Italy. So uh, I wish there would be like more makers on every country, on every country.
I
Here in South
agree.
America, I have seen the example of they're like one big maker from Peru, and
Mhm.
they have. I know that they are doing really well because people go there because in Peru generally people have this attention from or passion for wind instruments. So
Mhm.
they are really interested, and they can go there locally and try it, and they have their workshop where they invite people to go and try their ocarinas. So I wish that that could happen everywhere. I mean,
I
it would be
agree.
accessible to. So yeah, it's a matter of increasing everything, players, makers, and it's a really hard task, of course. But
Mhm.
I think it depends on everyone. I mean, I think that, as Ella says, one little action, I mean, playing in front of other people, talking about it to your friends, can spread the word to hundreds of people. I mean, even to 10 people. If those 10 people do the same, it spreads a lot. So we need the help of everyone. I mean, that's the only way that we can spread it and make it profitable for makers. And
Mhm.
with more makers, it's of course more accessible to players.
I agree.
And also, what I wanted to
Spread
say,
Arc awareness.
Yep.
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
what I wanted to say about festivals that they actually can be profitable for you as for a player, not from the point of view that you will bring money from there, but like for me, I went on my Budra festival with particular goal. I wanted to take the whole quintet out of there, quintet of Ocarina, so basically, and I knew that basically if I will try to buy like these bus and these bus, just trying to find this particular Ocarina that will fit me, I'll spend way more money actually like trying like different instruments. So like it was really cheaper to just came to like Italy to the festival and like find instrument there, try all of them and find
Mhm.
only those that I need.
Mhm. I agree. And having physical events where you can try a lot of different ocarinas is important and something that we, like, apart from Putrio and the festivals in Asia, which I personally don't know anything about, like there's very little opportunity for people to do that right now.
Yeah, I would love it. I have to say, I've ordered many ocarinas over the years, and I've been very disappointed at times. You know, I mean, and also like, I mean, just my experience now, having like going back to some of them, I'm like, man, there's problems.
Mhm. Of course. Yeah.
And well, Ella asks something really important: is how often do we support our own Ocarina educators? And that goes also to the makers and everything. I mean, in such a small community that is the Ocarina, at least in the West, uh, in the Occidental part of the world, yeah, we have to support. I mean, locally everyone. So
I
at least
agree.
for my scenario, I have both both you Robert's book,
Mhm.
Christina's book. I have David's book. I try to support as much as I can. Of course, it depends on your situation and your financial situation. But
Mhm.
I think that if you can help
People.
people that are supporting the instrument that you love, it's the only way that we can progress together, because the first step has to be from the players, from the people that love the instrument. I mean,
Mhm.
it's really difficult that, oh, someone from another part, I mean, a guitarist will find, oh, this Ocarina method book I will support. No,
Mhm.
that doesn't
Yeah.
happen. So the first step is to support the content creators, because yeah, it's like it could be us, and it's the only way to push forward this whole thing that we are all part of it.
And how can we effectively create a culture whereby it becomes like the norm to want to accept, to want to support our own community members financially?
I think that's beyond just a Ocarina community. It's like general human psychology. Like
Also, I actually have I actually have a method book myself. It's called The Joy of Music, Ocarina, homeschool, blah, 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 forgot. Joy of Music, Ocarina for the homeschool classroom. It's I actually am using it. Actually, I'm teaching my wife how to play the ocarina.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's actually getting pretty good at it. Also, spread awareness to your family and friends too.
That's good.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's a lot of marketing and everything involved to this stuff. I mean, probably we should help also promoting things. I mean, sharing, for example, I'm oversimplifying, but sharing a comment or a something that a maker published, just sharing it on people with people you know that would be interested, is like it's a little step that helps. So we should be like more open or think more about it, about how we from all of our spectrum. I mean, I may be a decent player, someone else may be a professional, someone may be a seller, a maker, someone may be a teacher. We all can contribute from our point of view. So I think we should be more network.
We need to be more proactive about promoting the instrument's history too.
But it's like I agree about like needing to be more proactive about promoting each other's things, and I actually have a point about that on a later slide. But with regards to the history of the ocarina, I think like that doesn't seem to be that much widely known about the history of the instrument and what's actually been done with it, because for example, like how Fabio Galliani explains the history of the ocarina, he in his presentation in the festival last weekend, he focused like exclusively basically on how the ocarina has been used in like how the ocarina developed mostly from an Italian point of view, but I think the instrument has been used in many other contexts, and it's like there's a lot of other places where it has appeared historically. Like there's a film like called Novecento, which me and Christina saw with Giorgio like Pacchioni when we stayed with him. We stayed with him and made ocarinas for a few days, but he was also talking about aspects of the history of the instrument that I didn't know previously. So I think there's a ton of information about the history of the ocarina that's basically like completely unknown, but like as of right now, I'd like to potentially talk about these history things either later or another day and carry on going through my slides. Sorry. with the previous three topics, like influencers, makers, and educators, I think there's some overall topics which apply to all three categories and which could be advantageous to all people falling into all three categories. And the first one I wanted to mention was niche marketing. So if you're trying to promote something generally, like say, trying to promote yourself as just a teacher or just a maker, then it can be more difficult than if you make an effort to find a specialization within that like role, because for example, if someone was teaching the ocarina, but instead of marketing themselves just as a teacher, but instead a teacher specializing in like jazz music, classical music, various kinds of folk music or whatever, then like that allows you to reach a more specific audience, which might potentially be more like if you have a market where you've got multiple people competing with each other, it allows separation between different people so that they aren't like people don't try to compete with each other and shoot each other in the foot so much.
Hey Rob, I got a question actually.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, I work as a product tester for STL Ocarina, and I'm
Yes.
also trying to help promote the history of the Ocarina. Wouldn't that be good if I did like? Wouldn't it be good if there were like different panels, like in different events we could probably do for that, Rob? Like
Probably,
spread
yes.
Ocarina awareness and all that stuff.
I think so, yes. Like,
I'm just asking that in general though.
generally, I agree with you. We can do, like, I think people should be doing events like we're doing with like group chats like this far more often, because it's not that difficult to do now.
Oh yeah. Thanks for answering that, Rob.
Mm-hmm. If getting back to the topic of this slide that I was talking about, because you're going to be working for yourself, because you're working for yourself, you'll need to learn to deal with customers and become comfortable taking money from people directly. And this may feel uncomfortable at first, as like sometimes people can feel that their work isn't worth what people would want to pay for it, or like, it can be difficult to know what to charge for something. So I think that on this category, people can like potentially start with lower prices and work upwards, but so that they may feel more comfortable with what they're charging initially, but also people like charging too little for something can also put people off, because it may make someone think that the project isn't very good, or that the person doesn't value what their own work. But do you want to say something, Christina?
Yes, like I wanted to set as an example myself, like with this Interroll book. I know that this is a good product. I know that it's really helpful. Like I use it myself and I'm proud of it. But at the same time, I feel guilty like setting any price for that, and like why like all Ocarinis are my friends, and like why do I charge them for that? And like it's really hard to struggle with.
Yeah, I agree with that, but yeah, I mean, of course, this is a job. I mean, it's you have to set your mind to the business thing, and it's like, I mean, I put in all this effort that cost money. I mean, I could have invested all that time on, I don't know, on doing anything else that could have given me more money. So yeah, it's really important to all of this that we're talking about how making a living is, all of this is business. I mean, everything. I mean, even going basking, when I went basking, I had like my sheet, my Excel sheet where I put everything. Oh, where did I play from what time to time, how much money I made. Then I switched places to find what was the more effective, what was the most effective time and place and everything. You have to treat everything as a business. I mean, it happens a lot in the music industry, for example, that a lot of bands play gigs for, oh, we're going to give you some beers, and they accept. And what's the problem? It affects, of course, you yourself, but it affects all the business. I mean, if all people start charging very low for all the hard work they put, of course, the people will prefer the cheapest job than someone that is charging actually what it costs for them. So that is also something important, the sense of community, of trying to not being like so cheap or not charging because you will lower the standard of the whole community or of the whole business. And that happens a lot, especially in the whole art business. I mean, for everyone, for musicians, for artists, that people tend to think, oh no, they are experts at that. They make all of this. They make it on one day. They didn't. They were born with the talent, so they know how to do it. So no, yeah, you are my friend. Give me this. So we have to be serious about it, and it's business. I mean, we have to take it with that mindset if we want to progress as a community from every point, from performers and makers.
I agree, but just the way the world works today, to be able to have time to work on things that you personally want to work on without having to do other work in addition to that. Like, the world just revolves around money now, so you have to be able to make something from your work to be able to just pay the bills and survive. And I agree about things devaluing, like if certain people charge less than it actually costs them to make something, and then that devaluing the whole community. I completely agree with that, and I don't really know what we can actually do about that though. But
No, that's generally like, and it's like really a business thing. I mean, it's like knowing exactly what your costs are, but not only materials on everything, but time on everything, time on marketing, time on everything. So you your ocarina is not only how many hours you craft it. I mean, if it takes you 4 hours to make one ocarina, it's not just those 4 hours. I mean, how can you present it to the people? How can you build, you make the networking, the branding, putting money on social media, I don't know, making your web site. Everything adds to the cost of your living. So yeah, I mean, it's really financial stuff that it's hard, but you should put the effort, and everyone should put the effort on getting that number. It's difficult, but we have to put the thought of it, and we have to know that our time costs money, so people can't take that for granted.
I agree. Other points on this general topics. I think everyone needs to know how to build an audience, and I have some tips on this and an appendix that Jordan Moore sent me. I was hoping that he would be here to be able to talk about this more now, but he couldn't be. But building an audience is like putting oneself into like many different outlets, like looking for social media, potentially guest posting on other websites, but also like people have been talking about already earlier, looking for opportunities to do performances or sell at events local to you where you are in the world. And with building,
Hey Robert, I gotta say, actually got another thought about that.
mhm,
Okay, for example, like sometimes our brand does conventions with that we sometimes do panels that deal with that the history of the ocarina. It's like not like plus a little bit through Legend of Zelda and also like the pop culture about it too. That's spreading ocarina awareness about it, right?
mhm, yes,
Sweet. Sorry if I keep on interrupting though.
mhm. With building an audience, I think search engine optimization and keyword targeting are important because uh, basically people, most people using search engines are like most people use the internet generally to try to solve problems. And when they search for things, they search for specific keywords. And like knowing what keywords people are searching for and which what keywords people are searching for the most and trying to create content around those keywords can be an effective way of generating traffic. But on like YouTube videos, a point that Jordan made that I've included in a later slide is trying to create content that people are searching for on YouTube and also creating content which is timely to the creating content that's timely for like an audience. So like if you know that some like game or something is getting a re-release in some period, like sometime soon, then targeting keywords relating to that by creating music covers from that specific piece of media might be effective. And with SEO also, backlinks are very important, like having links from sites like to your site from other websites which are topically related is very important. And historically, this has been very difficult to do because there's been very few Ocarina specific websites that aren't owned by major brands that have their own agendas. So like a maker wouldn't necessarily want to link to another maker because it's to some extent shooting yourself in the foot, although I don't actually agree with that point of view now, but why would take too long to explain here. But like I think having more small websites about the ocarina, like Christina, I helped Christina create a website fairly recently, and like having more small sites that, and then us helping each other by cross-linking through like things like interviews or reviews of each other would be advantageous to the whole community, because then like Google and search engines will start to see that, and then that will start to increase. It will start to like it will make the ocarina look like a more serious thing to search engines, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And when I ran through this discussion earlier with Christina, she mentioned that it's difficult to find individual members of the Ocarina community who aren't socially active. Like it can be difficult to find smaller makers because unless you hang around on places like TON, because their websites don't rank very highly, or maybe they don't have websites at all, or don't have a website in English, which is true for a lot of the Asian makers. And also, like people like Ocarina players, Ocarina teachers, how do you find good players or good teachers? There's no simple way of doing that right now.
Yeah, I think we have Ella says that should we take advantage of the websites everyone has access to now, like YouTube, TikTok, etc. So yeah, probably there's a lot of platforms that we need. That probably some of them are more useful or maximizes the way that people can reach to them. So yeah, it's something I think that we should study about what are the trendings and what works best for people without so many knowledge about it, that they will find that on accident or everything. In fact, for example, how my story about how I reached the Ocarina, it was because I started I found one of these Peruvian ocarinas at a local market, yeah? And then I thought, oh, could it be this could be a real instrument? Some people could play it on bands, on anything. And I made just a Google search, and it led me to YouTube videos. I found there Mountain Ocarina something. So that way, I was like, I found it. But
Yes.
I don't remember if I found probably the first link that could jump. It was probably something like STL Ocarinas or Songbird. I don't know. But I started searching because I wanted to see it visually or actually hearing to what the performance were. I started browsing on YouTube videos and just by typing like Ocarina or Ocarina like performance. So yeah, I think that we should see what with all these engines that personally I don't have too much experience, but I think that there should be a lot of tools that can tell right now what are the trendings that people will find when they're searching for something. Because for example, and as a maker, as if you want to promote or I don't know if you write articles or books or something, it's something that one should be keep updated to what's the trendings. Because for example, I don't use TikTok. I'm like an old man that I don't know everything about it. But I'm sure that if I wanted to be like famous or influencer about it, I probably should use that one. I mean, it's something that we should keep be updating and searching. And yeah, it's really important, this kind of thing, like what are the search engines or all these statistics. I mean, the world of marketing and everything works by statistics. I mean, all putting some money on ads and everything, it works like that. That's like a way that you have to invest time researching and putting money on it to be more accessible to different people.
I agree. For example, there's the Google AdSense keywords tool, which you can use to find, get a sense of what people are searching for and how many hits those search terms are returning. And I believe that YouTube has a similar feature that allows people to search for within their own platform what people are searching for and like how many hits those terms are getting. And Like Ella said, from an educator standpoint, I definitely struggled to put my lessons together. I never had that type of experience before. And I watched David's recorded PAX South video and tried to get some sense of an outline. Years later, I was able to get in touch with Ocarina and received so much helpful information and commentary to improve my lessons. Like many people wanting to teach don't have extensive musical backgrounds that have a hard time doing so alone. I'll try to find some. Many people with extensive musical backgrounds often working on other projects, so we're lacking a decent number of educators. It's really difficult finding the confidence to sell one's own product for sure. One's craft,
The smell's still in
one's
here.
craft is. Whoever's talking, can you mute, please? I'll try to find some. Many people with extensive musical backgrounds. Sorry. It's really difficult finding the confidence to sell one's own product for sure. One's craft is worth the price, and labor and sales efforts and marketing can be terrifying depending on how well you know the customer. It should be okay to ask for reviews and promotion with compensation for their help. Everything good that I've heard about my business, Pure Ocarinas, came from word of mouth, and what Stefan said, all efforts count as labor and factors into the pricing, and SEO is vital in this age. Like basically what she said about education and not knowing how to structure teaching materials is something that I think is a massive problem right now, and why I think that the Ocarina community would benefit massively from a book. I think the community would benefit massively from a book or some other like form of like some other form of guidance on how not like how to structure teaching materials and how to learn how to teach the Ocarina. But like Charles Berman raised his hand and wanted to say something.
Yeah, yes. I'm also like also do like a planner. Like my mother-in-law does. She's an educator for special needs. Ella, I would recommend actually do like a teaching planner. That would actually help you as well.
Are you an educator, Granny? I guess I'll teach y'all that.
So that's actually a good idea for That's actually a good idea to make a little planner. Also write stuff down. That could actually help.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Does anyone else have anything to add on this topic before I move on?
No.
I guess not. So just reading the chat to see if there's anything else. Like Tina made a comment like spilling $30 bottles of glaze all over yourself in studio. Not sure how things like that would get factored into final costs, but like damage to work or loss of materials like that is a very it's an important thing to take account of. I don't know exactly how you can factor that into costs, other than like if you watch your own production over time, then you will like you'll notice how often things like that happen, and you can just develop a sense for your own process how that would affect things for you.
Also, another way to spread ocarina awareness is just can also not only the ocarina become a serious instrument, but it's also a fun instrument to play as well. You agree with that, Robert?
Yes. I think the ocarina is fun to play. I think it's approachable, but I don't agree with the general view that it's easy to play. I think it's a difficult, like playing, if someone doesn't have any prior experience, learning to play well enough to be like musically interesting to an audience is going to take a lot of time regardless of what instrument you choose to play.
But the one thing is, you never ever give up.
Mm-hmm. This, like, the next slide is going to talk about a bit about pricing your work. So before that, I wanted to talk about some common business terms, which are the turnover, which is the total takings of your business, like everything that you've made from customers giving you money. Expenses are things that you have to pay for in the course of running your business, i.e. building space, shipping costs, boxes, website fees, potentially advertising if you use paid advertising, etc. And your profit is your turnover minus your expenses, and that's the amount of money you have actually made. And profit can end up being negative, which is called a loss. And within the first year or two of starting any small business, making a loss is relatively common because you spend so much time just doing research and doing research, like developing projects and things that you don't have any good way of making returns initially. And I also wanted to mention that certain tax authorities allow you to write off some kinds of expenses from your taxable income so that you can, like, those expenses basically aren't taxable. And with regards to pricing, you need to consider the total profit you need to be making to live. Consider what you will be selling and how much time it takes to make that and how much time it takes to market. Consider differences between your expenses and turnover. So to make a basic example, you want to teach the ocarina professionally, you need to make £2,000 a month, convert that into your own currency. Teaching the ocarina online 9 to 5, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. So that will be a 40-hour week, 160 hours in a month. So you would need to be charging about £12.50 an hour minimum, assuming that ideal situation. However, that is an ideal situation, and in practice, you aren't going to be able to have students 100% of the time, and even if you could, that wouldn't be sustainable because it allows no time to do things like marketing or developing or researching teaching materials, practicing your skills yourself, like practicing your own playing, practicing your teaching, studying how to teach better, etc. So realistically, in this situation, I think something between £15 and £20 an hour would be a reasonable rate, accounting for the other things. And actually, that's a pretty common rate for music tuition in the UK. So it's a reasonable calculation. Does anyone have anything to add to this topic?
Yeah, the main thing is that, as you said, it's for this world, for especially for musicians, for performers. This is really, really variable. I mean, you can keep track of what you're doing, but you will see month after month that it will be different. So only experience will give you how you can predict it so much, because you will depending on basking and jigs and performing, which are really variable. I mean, you can get an event, a wedding for, I don't know, I will say $500, and then be 1 month without anything, or I don't know. But it's so variable that it's difficult. It's difficult to predict if you're going to make a living with that, especially for performers. So, but yeah, but you need to keeping that in mind, you need to charge accordingly to try to prevent those variations to affect your general income. So yeah, so you can't charge too low thinking, oh, I'm going to have gigs, I don't know, 3 gigs per week, because if they don't happen, you're basically, yeah, you won't eat that month. So
you always need to be making more than you need at any particular time, because income is variable over time. Working for yourself isn't like having a day job where you have a specific amount of pay per month. Your pay is going to vary, and like if you do something for long enough, then you might notice that your pay varies in a cyclical way depending on the time of year. Well,
exactly. For example, in France, I asked for a friend that is musician. He's a guitarist, and he explained me that, for example, in France, you get paid. They have like a plan that if you make like, I don't know, this is an example, but like 40 gigs per year, you will have like some savings that the government will give you back. So you will have like a minimum wage that they give you back. So to cover, for example, on winter where there are many performances and everything. So on each country, it can be more variable, more steady, or anything. So one of the main messages from me, from the musician perspective, is that you need to research what's going on exactly, and all the benefits that maybe you can ask for money as a maker in some countries. For they give you money because if you I know, sign some papers and you're proposing that this is an interesting thing for the community, and they may help you with money. So on every country works different, and each one should study what are all the possibilities to make money.
I agree. Especially, thanks for mentioning that like different countries might provide opportunities potentially for grants or things to be able to make additional funding for yourself to do something, even if you're like the money that you're making from your primary, like the doing performances in itself isn't sufficient. I wanted to briefly mention a little bit about marketing and sales funnels. So if you're creating a product, then you need somehow to be able to get people to come in to buy your product. And if you don't have a plan for this, you can have a very good website or something, and but however, if you aren't getting people to come into your website, then you aren't going to be making sales. So you need all of these steps. So you need awareness, which is making people aware of your product or service. Then that creates interest in the customer, and they may be comparing you against other people. And at some point, your customer will decide which one to buy, and that's your marketing copy, marketing materials are going to significantly influence the decision and action stages. So you want to be marketing using any avenue that you can find, including social media, like search engines, possibly ads, and possibly in-person, like local opportunities if you can find them. And also, I'd recommend searching for terms like digital marketing and sales funnel on Google, because there's a lot of information available about this. Does anyone have any comments? Cool. And something that I consider to be a significant problem that we're going to have to overcome is that from what I can see, a lot of the things that are needed to move the ocarina forward, like previously mentioned, needing materials to help teachers learn how to teach. Things like that are inherently going to take a long time to create, like my book did, and they're also the kind of thing that you can't really release periodically. Like you have to complete the whole thing and then release it, and that completing the whole thing could take like months or years potentially, and we need a way of funding that. So potential opportunities that I've thought of here, like self-funding, which requires that you already have savings or another income source. Not everyone has savings. Other work would cause loss of time, which would make the work that you're doing take longer. And so that's probably the best option if possible, but not everyone will be able to do that. There's things like Kickstarter, and I've seen, like, I believe David Eric Ramos used Kickstarter to fund his Ocarina method. However, from what I've seen, other people who don't have such a large audience, who have attempted to use crowdfunding to fund projects, have failed to be funded because the Ocarina market is just incredibly small right now. Loans, business loans, potentially. As of right now, again, due to the small size of the market, I have very little confidence in being able to pay one back at all. let alone nullify interest losses. And the amount of time that it took me to write my own book, honestly, I doubt that I'll ever be able to recover that financially, just because it took so long. So I wouldn't personally advise anyone take out loans to fund projects in this market at the current point in time, unless you know exactly, unless you have a very specific plan with that and know exactly what you're doing and can basically guarantee that you're going to be able to make a meaningful return. As I mentioned, people with a larger audience can use like crowdfunding and also donations, Patreon, ad revenues, and specifically for something like a book or possibly a course, there's options of getting an advance from a publisher, although I have no idea how to approach that myself because I have no insight into that market generally. And as someone mentioned earlier, there's also a potential opportunity for grants relating to arts, but again, I don't know anything about that, and it's going to be opportunities will be different for different countries, so you would have to research your own market. And does anyone have anything to add on this topic? Okay. And we're basically at the end of my presentation that I have, and I have an appendix from which was advice written by Jordan Moore, who I'd hoped, as I said, could have been here today. But this basically explains how he, as a player, makes money from the ocarina. So I make passive income from my YouTube ads and from revenue from streaming my music on Spotify, Apple Music, etc. So if someone wanted to get into producing some of their own music and uploading it to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, they could make some passive income that way. Then there's Patreon. For any kind of online creator, Patreon is a good way to connect with the people in your base of subscribers who are able and willing to support you financially as well. And that's how I currently make money as an ocarinist and musician, but I'm hoping to do more teaching of the ocarina in the future as well. And a couple of things I'd say are the most important are posting consistently, always trying to improve your content as course, sharing your videos on social media. Reddit is a great place to find potential subscribers. Posting timely content. Example, I'm working on a Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles arrangement because the remastered version of that game is coming out at the end of August. More people will be searching for that, so there's a better chance that people will find the video. Going off the last point, search engine optimization, SEO for your videos is a good thing to look into. It has to do with using keywords throughout your title, description, and tags so that your video is more likely to appear when people search for those words. There are plenty of YouTube videos that go more in depth on SEO. Lastly, collaborations are great. Working with other people can attract some of their audience to yours and vice versa. Above all, though, I'd say that if you make I'd say if you make music you're passionate about, people will notice and follow you. Be careful not to get too far into the whole SEO game and make sure that you're ultimately making music for yourself. I got lucky with my Luigi's song video and Greatest Change. Important people found them and shared them, and that's what brought people to my channel. So things like that can happen too. The following links contain some useful tips, and these articles go over some of the things that I've talked about here, including putting yourself into as many potential venues as possible, like using as many social media platforms as possible, and like niche marketing, which I've mentioned before. And one of these also describes how you can legally license copyrighted music to sell it yourself. But I'd recommend reading these pages for yourself, and I will post a link to these slides on the event page for this event later, and probably also on TOM. But I think that's the end of my presentation, and does anyone have any comments or questions? There's a few comments coming in the chat. Ella says, I can attest to the luck that Jordan is mentioning. Okabando also got lucky with large Facebook pages discovered and shared our videos. Our collaboration with Insane Ethnoria Music.
Insane in the Rain.
Insane in the Rain music also helped on YouTube. And Tina was asking if I have a Patreon yet, and I don't yet, and I'm not immediately sure how to approach doing one because I'm not sure what, like, Patreon works mostly by restricting access to information to subscribers, and I'm not sure right now what information I have that I could share in that way. But if anyone has any suggestions around this, then it would be helpful, because like I said, organizing events like this and thinking about topics and creating slides takes a significant amount of time, which is currently completely unpaid. So if I could find a way of making a return from that, then it would be very useful. But I have thought about just possibly putting a PayPal donate link in this, like into these chats, so that people could donate if they wish to.
About Patreon, I think that you as maker can make kind of live streams sometimes, just during your work, explaining what you do, so like other people's like makers or not makers could be interested in that and like pay for seeing that and asking questions sometimes.
Of course. Alice says, for Patreon, advice on recording tutorials for Ocarina making and techniques to share. Like Tina says, like in your info pages that are so often referenced, people pay to observe the skills of creators on Patreon, and I think that that's a good point. So I think there are opportunities here, but I'll have to probably create an account, try it myself, and see what actually works in practice. But I think if no one else has any comments to add, then we can finish here for today. And I'm planning on having another talk like this on a different topic, which is kind of like provincially decided, but I'm not ready to announce it quite yet. And about, we'll be having another discussion in about 2 weeks from now at the same time. But if there's no more comments, then I will be ending here.
Actually got a positive quote for you guys. Can I go and say it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, let me pull it up. Give me 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys heard the movie Rocky?
I haven't seen it myself, but I've heard of it.
Cool. Well, I got a really good inspirational quote for y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't no sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place. I don't care how tough you are. It'll beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody, it's gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you get hit and keep moving forward. How much you take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
Mm-hmm.
Like that?
Thank you. Yes, I do. Just regardless of what people do to put in your way, keep moving forward and keep trying different things. Thank you for the quote, and
I'm always a very positive guy.
thank you. And thank you to everyone for coming. And as I said, we will be having another discussion in 2 weeks from now if you are interested. But I will now be finishing here. So thank you to everyone for coming, and goodbye.